This is Rocky with the Rocky Shows You How channel. I say that, in jest. I have like 2 videos on here so far, but I like to post videos whenever I come across something where I'm learning how to do it, and there don't seem to be great videos that explain it in the way that I needed to hear it. So once I learn how to do it, I'll put a video out there. That's my intent. Put a video out there that says how. So for this video, we're going to talk about setting up an ESPixelStick with xLights, and specifically how to use a second or third or fourth pixel stick with xLights. And so it's not super obvious. I think a lot of the documentation in the chat rooms, you'll find a lot of talk about universes and channels and all this, and so xLights can make things more complicated than it needs to. What I found is it may make you think you need to go in there and be manually editing channels and all this other stuff, but really you don't. And so I'm going to show you how to do it the easiest way I found. And again, I did finally come across the missing link to this, what I'm going to do in a video somewhere on YouTube, and I was like, if that's the only video out there that shows this, I need to make another one. So I make the assumption at this point you already have ESPixelStick set up. You've gone through this process. You've got 2 or 3 or 4 of these at least. So you know exactly how to set them up. You know how to figure out what their IP address is and all that. So I've already done this, and currently I have 7 pixel sticks. I've got 6 of them set up in xLights. You can see this here. I've got 6 that show up under my controllers tab. I've got a 7th. We may see a little bit of remnants from the number 7 because I have actually done this and then undid it so I can make a video on it. But I've got 7, and so when I hit discover, we should see a 7th one show up. Everything is on right now. We should see it show up. So I'm going to go through the process of getting the 7th in. If you look at my layout, I've got a little section of ESPsticks over here that I'm going to add. This is a pretty simple layout. It's my first year doing this. I've got this little section of ESPsticks that we're going to add. We see that they don't show controllers under start channels. The other ones that have been set up show some information. I didn't have to do any of this manually. I didn't have to edit any channels or universes or any of that stuff. We're going to let xLight do it for us using this one simple trick that I found online the other day. And by no means we'll actually see the sequencer for this also, but by no means I'm not an expert on this. This is my first year doing this. I just started using xLights 3 days ago. I just started building my props about 3 weeks ago. I started ordering stuff in July, but none of it really showed up until October almost, before I finally got everything I needed to just put out the first thing. I had my installers that did my regular Christmas lights, my roof line last year, which is regular LED lights. They agreed to put the pixel lights up. Obviously they don't understand anything about it, but I showed them, I had a diagram that showed them that this is a starting point. I explained a lot of it to them. They installed them, dropped the wires. I've made the boxes, the power boxes, controllers, and everything else since then. So that's kind of where I am. And when I went to the point of getting xLights to actually show me in the sequencer what was going to happen, it worked great. I mean, I could see exactly what I wanted to happen here, but I couldn't get it to actually send anything to the lights outside. Even though my test through the web interface worked fine. I've got all my different web interfaces, and I could run here and I could switch this to rainbow and it would start showing stuff outside. But that's not a test of your connectivity. That's just a test that the pixel stick itself can tell the lights what to do. So I assume you've already done that. I assume that you have set up your pixel stick. You know how to get to the web interface. You know how to run it, put it in rainbow mode so you can see it do something cool. I expect you know how to do those things. So first, that means we need to get the pixel stick in the system. And so I'm going to just hit discover. And so if your pixel stick is on your Wi-Fi correctly, when you hit discover, it's going to find it. So I'm going to hit discover. Should find number 7. Why is it called ESPixelStick 7? Because whenever I set it up, I specified under a wireless setup, my host name is ESPixelStick 7. And under device setup, my device ID is ESPixelStick 7. I like to be consistent on that. I don't really have to change anything else in here other than device ID and host name. You can do both of those during the flashing process. And then other than that, you set up your pixel count. So how many pixels do you expect to be controlling with this pixel stick? I do enable multicast. You don't have to. I'm not an expert. I don't know why I wouldn't. Until it hurts me, I'm going to leave it on. My understanding is it's a little more flexible, in that where unicast is the alternative, means that you're targeting your packets. This one allows a little more flexibility. It's supposed to maybe reduce lost packets or something, but I have read that it also increases network traffic. So far, I haven't had an issue. So don't take that with a grain of salt as whether or not you want to do that. I assume that you've done these things, and if I've got those set up quickly, then it shows up as ESPixelStick 7, Pistol Stick 7, and everything else we can pretty much leave alone, except we do need to specify model. So if we don't, then we're going to have an issue setting things up later. We need xLights to understand how we do that. So I'm going to set that to 7. I'm going to set Pixel Stick, and I'm happy with it at that point. So I don't have to change anything else. We definitely want auto size on, active. It's going to verify the IP address. I have static IPs for these, which I set up in Google Wi-Fi, so that I make sure that a specific IP address, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107. So I want to be very predictable in that way. So that looks good to me. And I want to go ahead and go into visualize. And I can see, this is really the key. This is the thing, let me close this real quick. This is the thing that makes things easy. Without visualize, and that was the missing step that I hadn't seen in a video yet when I was showing about how to do this. You would think you have to come here, and you'll find a lot of people in their videos talking about, well, come over here, and go down here, and under controller, pick a controller. You can either pick a controller, or you can pick use start channel. And if you pick use start channel, then at that point you have to actually specify the channel. So then you got to start calculating channel numbers and everything. And there's other ways you can do this, where you can, I believe you can, somewhere on here you can tell it, let's see, is it going to let me do this? Use start channel. Somewhere on here we can tell it to do an offset from the universe of some specific controller. I don't actually see that right now. Anyways, we don't want to do that. I'm going to leave that at no controller. I don't want to be editing anything here, but we can see it's not happy. As soon as we have no controller, if this is red, this is an issue. It doesn't know what to do with this. So we're missing something. The thing we're missing, the thing that took me a while to find, is visualize. Double click on it here or hit visualize. And we're going to let the visualize tool do all the work for us about assigning channels and universes and controllers and all that crap. It's going to show me on the right side every single model that is not currently assigned to another controller. So I've got 20 piece stakes that are unassigned. So I'm going to, there's no quick way that I'm aware of to like do them all at once. I'm just going to drag it over. I'm going to do the second one, and notice I can pick a side. So we want this to go to the end, the output of number 1, and it just in sequence. I'm going to make sure that I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, oops, all the way to 20. It's going to start scrolling here in a second, and we just want to make sure we verify each time we drag one on that it gets a chance to scroll over. 9, 10, 11, and when we're done, we'll scroll back and forth just to make sure we didn't get one messed up. The scrolling on this is a little goofy, but as long as you hesitate for a second before you drop it, it should scroll right before it does. Okay. So 1, just make sure it counts up. Looks good, and I'm done. And now when I go over here to layout, I can see ESPixelStick 7 starting at channel 1, and it's 15 channels for that first pixel stick. It's 15 channels because each pixel stick is 5 lights, each channel RGB, or sorry, each pixel is 3 channels RGB. So a 5 pixel stake is 15 channels. So we should see it count up by 15s every time, which we do 65, 80, 95, 10, 25, 40. So that looks good. Alright, that's pretty much all there is to adding it. We don't have to do really anything else. You can see I've got some other stuff I have done. So I've set up a group called P-Stakes Left. And so that's just all the ones on the left. The editor here is a little goofy, or the visualizer. So that's all the ones on the left. And I've got a section on the right. I've got some arches. I've got roof lines. So I've got some sort of divided up sections. Really, you're going to do these groups based off however you're going to organize your show. And so for me, it's a really basic show right now. If we look in sequencer, what we see, my show, since I didn't until today have everything out in the yard. I'm not trying to sequence to music. I just have 30-second transitions. And so I've just picked some of the more interesting transitions that are up here. And I've got them grouped by my C9 pixels are up at the top. My bullet pixels, I might want to control these separately because like the C9 pixels I run at 50% and I run the bullet pixels at 40%, or they kind of overpower the C9s. And then I've got left and right stakes, which I might do something different with. Just kind of have them broken out here in different ways that I can control these. Ultimately, I could do it individually as well. And if we want to make sure, now these actually show up, these P stakes show up in here already because I had them there before. Like I said, I've done this before, so I'm going to go back a step. I'll go back to layout. I'm going to add another group. This is a step that I found was missing a number of times. Like, how do we get the model to show up here so that I can control it in my sequence? Well, we need to add it over there. So I'm going to add an empty group. So we add a model or group to the sequencer the same way. And I'll call this test piece stakes left. I don't have to have anything in it, but I'm going to go ahead and add something to it. And so I'll grab my P stakes lefts. It's going to show anything here on the left that is not already in this group. There. So they're all in it. And I'm going to click save. So now when I go back to my sequencer, of course it doesn't show up. I don't see test P6 left. I've got to right click on here and do edit display elements. That pops up this box. And then it sees that I've got this group that isn't already in this sequence. And so I'm going to grab that and I'm going to hit the right arrow to add it. He shows up down here at the bottom. And I want to I'd like to drag all my groups up to the top, so I'm going to push it up there and then down just a little so it's kind of near the top. And I can see that each one of those shows up as a group. These other things are here because they're inside one of the groups is how they were brought over, but they're not visible. So left and right, I could make them individually visible here if I want to, but I don't need to. I'm never going to control them individually, and so I don't need to do it that way. If I wanted to, I could, or I could just come here to test P6 left, and I could add a transition individually inside of this group. There's nothing wrong with that either. So now that I've got them over here, and we see test P6, I can bring down, we'll bring down, what is this, shader? I don't know anything about that one. I'm still learning what some of these are. Shimmer. Could drag it down to test P6 left. This transition is going to apply to anything that's in that group. We can kind of see it's not doing much. I need to mess with the settings. I'm kind of at that point now. I'm not an expert on this, so I'm just like going around adding transitions, adding effects, and like just messing with the settings, trying to figure them out. But it is that's pretty much all there is to adding the controller, the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth controller, for me 7th, adding a model to it, adding groups to it, adding them to your sequencer. And then, how do we run it? At this point, if I wanted to test it, I see it in the visualizer here. Let me get rid of this. Edit. Yes. So so if I wanted to test this in the yard, then I really just need to click on here somewhere and see it run in my visualizer, and then just hit this light bulb. This would be output to lights. If everything's working correctly, when I do that, I should see exactly what I see here. It should be what's happening to the lights in the yard. If it's not, how do you figure that out? That's not really what this video is about, but I would go to Tools, Test, and I would go to Controllers, and I would find the controller we wanted to test, and I would make sure that it looks like this. Make sure that you have a pixel port row that is enabled. If it says unavailable, that's a bad thing. That means that something about your setup, the way you used Visualize to add the models to the controller, is not correct, and so you need to look into that. Again, not really the point of this video. I'm still trial and erroring that type of stuff. The other way is you can go to Tools and then check Sequence, and check sequence is going to run some diagnostics on pretty much everything about the sequence that you're editing. It'll tell you anywhere where it has issues. It'll kick out a text document. That's going to come up here in a second. And it'll find some things that maybe it just doesn't like. It'll also tell you when something is very wrong. So, alright, so that document came up over here. It tells you a little bit about your IP addresses. I don't have any issues with those. Bunch of no problem founds, no problems found. Everything looks good. There's one warning. What was that? One. I'm looking for the word warn. Multiple outputs with the same universe. If I were trying to address things by universe number, that would be an issue, but I'm not. Everything is on universe 1 because that's the way the auto size and everything works. So yeah, that's not really an issue for me. I'm not trying to address things by universe. Cool. So then I go, next would be to go to the scheduler. I'm not really going to mess around too much with scheduler. I have a basic schedule, so when you come into this, it'll be pretty much empty. You'll go to File, select My Show folder. You pick the folder that it shows. If for some reason your scheduler isn't detecting things correctly or it doesn't show your controllers correctly, we should see Pixel 6.7 on here now. That's probably because your Shows folder is wrong. So just make sure that the Shows folder here matches the Shows folder that you use for for xLights. Right, so I've got this Shows folder here. Make sure they're the same. And if they are, then you should see all your pixel sticks show up here. This color means good, no failures. And then you'll have to go add. You're going to add a sequence. You're going to pick it. I put mine just in a subfolder called sequences. You're going to go ahead and pick a whatever sequence you want to run. The one that we were just working in is this 21030. I've already got it in there. And that this is where we would give it a name. This is where I gave mine the name simple 21030, which is right here. Okay, I'm not going to do it again. And then that'll give you this row, but nothing underneath it. This is the schedule row. So then you need to do schedule. And then this is where you specify the schedule. So again, I called mine simple 21030 loop. And then I leave everything else alone and just modify the time of day. That's just, it's defaulting to 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock, but I run mine 5:45 to 11. So otherwise I haven't changed anything else. Once you've got that, then you can just hit play. That'll play it immediately. Or if it's within the bounds of that schedule, it should play whenever it's time. But if you're not sure, hit reset. That'll sort of reset it. And if we were inside the bounds of when that schedule should run, which we're not, but if we were, it would be running right now, and I'd be able to look out in the yard and it should be running. And if it's not, that's, you know, go back to your controller test, go back to, you know, for me, I go back here. Sometimes I'll have to go back to the sequencer and then just go in and do a render, render all. Make sure that you're seeing exactly what you want to see here, because if you don't see the right things here, if something's not enabled here, you're not going to see it right in the yard. So, but yeah, I'll go over here and render, make sure everything plays correctly, save it, go over, reselect my show folder. That kind of refreshes everything and go from there. That really should be it. Like I said, I'm not an expert on this, and as I'm learning, if I find things where I just can't find good videos on it, I know a lot of people have been doing this for a lot of years. You know, if something doesn't make sense to me, then I want to figure out how to make it make sense, and I want to try to help it make sense to other people. So that's the end of this one. You know, as I come up to the next topic, I'll post another video. But hopefully this was helpful to someone. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat, and I'll do my best to figure it out and give you an answer, or point you to someone who knows better than me. So, all right. See you next time.